identity is basically non-existent. And so they have a clean slate that is easy to manipulate, that is hard to detect.
Sure.
So in other words, if my son were to have his identity stolen, he probably wouldn't find out if he didn't have identity theft protection, which he does, until he was 18 or applying for school loan or for a car or whatever it might be, because how else would he know unless he got a bill in the mail? And that's the other way they do it. But they also change your address, so a lot of times you don't know.
Of course. So minors are vulnerable too.
Minors are vulnerable. College students are 5 times more likely to have their identity stolen. It has to do with the environment.
Sure.
And the implications of that are certainly detrimental in terms of the ability to get a job, the ability to get extended credit to them with mortgage and stuff like that. And the whole purpose of an institution of college is to produce.
Mm-hmm. And not to beat up on college students, I would think that, I'm stereotyping, but they would have a higher likelihood of just ignoring the problem, which only makes it worse. Whereas you used your mom as an example, I think she'd be probably more likely, like you would be more likely to try and fix it. That college student, being young and experienced, maybe a little naive, they got their hands full with school, college loans, working, having a good time, that they may just be like, forget about it, who cares? And then I'll really hurt them down the line.
Absolutely.
All right.
It could affect them for a long time.
So in your top 3, I was a little surprised that you didn't advocate for people signing up for, there's various services there. Our role here today is not to hawk anybody's service, but to be educational. But I'm a little surprised about who should use credit monitoring. Would you say everybody should, or is there a special group of people or a particular vulnerable group of people that ought to? Can you just speak to that as we begin to wrap up here today?
Sure, absolutely. And in no way was I putting those in an order.
Agreed.
So identity theft, protection monitoring, credit monitoring, I would say is going to be the norm in the next 5 to 10 years, where what I mean by that is most people are going to be aware enough to have it in terms of the majority of adults. And I think it's going to penetrate the market in a few ways. I think mainly through HR benefits. And I think that everybody should have it. And
so when you say HR, that means it would be some type of benefit offered by employers.
Correct.
And is that because they're looking out for their employees, or is there a business protection element to that as well?
Both. So in protecting your employees, so in the world of benefits, it's an extremely low cost, especially if you do it as a group, right? So taking your $15 product, it's more like a $6 product for a year. Mm-hmm. So and that's general statements. I'm not giving you an actual pricing, but it's just an idea. And so you're adding a benefit to your employees, which helps with morale, and when most times people are taking away benefits in this day and age now. So, but it also will help with what we were talking about before, with the absenteeism, with presenteeism, and there is certainly a return on investment when you look at the cost analysis of paying for the identity theft on behalf of your employees, and then the return based on what it would cost you if that percentage were out of work or doing identity theft remediation at work.
Okay. And
having a monitoring program greatly diminishes that.
I see.
And one of the main points, which we didn't talk about yet, is with monitoring programs, identity theft monitoring programs and credit monitoring programs with providers, is you want to choose one that has full service restoration or what they might call remediation. And all that means is they're going to take care of the issue for you, essentially. They're going to do full service wallet restoration, where they'll replace all your credit cards, they'll do everything for you, and they'll do it through a limited power of attorney. So you sign over your limited power of attorney, and all the reports that I made to the FTC or whatever it might be, they'll do for you on your behalf, exclusive of like getting a new license because you have to go to the DMV. And they'll do that all for you. Now, if you look at the credit monitoring and the identity theft protection that EQUIFAX is offering, the number one thing that I would suggest is that the most important piece they don't have. They don't have the piece that does the full service remediation.
They don't have the restoration.
They do not have that on the product.
Which,
that
going
they're
back to
getting.
your 300 plus hours that it takes people to fix, that's
Big
really,
deal.
really important.
Yeah. And probably the reason they don't have it is because it's expensive to run that.
Yes.
That's a big overhead piece.
So you mentioned that you believe over the next handful of years this will become much more popular, meaning that many, many more adults are going to have it, whether they get it personally or through their employer. Do you have any sense on how much penetration there is? Like, what percentage of Americans over 18 have some sort of protection, whether it's the type you advocate for or a lighter version? But do you have any sense of the numbers?
I don't know the exact numbers of how many people actually have identity theft protection. I know that there's people see the need. It's
Yes.
sort of like life insurance, right? They see the need, they think they should have it, but the number that actually have it is much less. And so the closest numbers that we have to something like that would be that about 25% of HR departments are looking at it, and there's less that have it.
Okay.
But they don't. There's no aggregator of those numbers.
But it's a relatively small percentage. It's not half
Absolutely.
the Americans, right?
No,
It's probably
not even
below a
close.
quarter,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
I would guess. But that's very likely to go up. Makes complete sense to me. So thank you so much for joining us today. It was a
Thank
great
you.
discussion,
Absolutely.
timely subject. I think the listeners will get an awful lot out of this. So thank you, Brian. If you want more information about Elliott Wealth Management or myself or anybody on our team, please go to our website, www.elliottwealth.com. That's 2 L's, 2 T's. You could also reach us at toll-free 888-959-5904. Thank you, everyone, for joining me on today's Simply Financial podcast.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of SagePoint Financial Incorporated and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure a profit nor protect against a loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. The information being provided is strictly as a courtesy. When you link to any of the websites provided here, you are leaving this website. We make no representation as to the completeness or accuracy of information provided at those websites. Nor is the company liable for any direct or indirect technical or system issues or any consequences arising out of your access to or your use of third-party technologies. Websites, information, and programs made available through this website. When you access one of those websites, you assume total responsibility and risk for your use of the website you are linking to. Securities and advisory services are offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA, SIPC. Insurance services offered through Elliott Wealth Management, LLC are not affiliated with SagePoint